Is that task cam or is that the Zoom? So I saw that video screen. What is that's the video screen? We haven't used it. What's the video screen? Oh, so it's just a better screen.
No. That's good.
Yeah, those two.
Yes.
Yeah.
I got it.
Miss Bennett?
I don't know how. So teach me.
Well, I don't know. My wife always knows.
So here, the reserved spots without names at the top.
So how do I get out of this without? See, I don't want to. Can you run power?
Please, juniors and junior teachers, head down the north stairs to the cafeteria. Juniors, you are sitting on the blue banquette seat.
Okay.
She's going to show you where to go. Do not sit in a reserved area. Do not sit in a reserved area, okay? Do not sit in a reserved area, okay? Do not sit in a reserved area, okay? Do not sit in a reserved area. Do not sit in a reserved area. Do not sit in a reserved area. Do not sit in a reserved seat, okay? It says reserved. Do not sit in a reserved seat, okay? You. Yeah, that's what she just called it. Do not sit in a reserved area, okay? Don't sit in a reserved seat.
All right. Grade 9 Ignite. Ignite only. There should be 5 of you. Please head downstairs on the north stairway. Leave your bags in your 5th period classroom. You will you will sit with the sophomores in the white chairs on the top deck.
I'm so sorry.
Oh. So these are some. Okay, juniors, y'all right there. Here. Okay, you a junior? You're a sophomore, okay. You're going back, don't sit in the reserve seat, okay? Go down.
All right, last but not least, seniors, seniors. You are sitting in the front row, opposite the stage on the first level. Seniors. Leave your bags and come on down. Thank you.
Is that all?
No, ma'am.
Okay, right there. Junior's right there. Junior's right here. All juniors right here.
And Dennis is up.
Junior's right here, on the bench. Junior's right here.
Are y'all seniors?
You're speaking, you have a question, up there by his film.
Here we go. Just checking it again. Everybody okay? Thumbs up? Yes? Good? Okay. Talk. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Good.
Oh, these are ninth grade.
Here we go. How's that? Yeah?
Juniors are right here. Juniors right here.
I'll bill you.
Okay. Here we go. Trying again. Checking. I'm not sure who's over there. Okay. Yeah. All right. Just talking a little bit, making sure that we're getting some good levels to the camera. How's that working for you? Keep talking. All right. I can tell a story. So, no, I won't do that. Just making sure that all levels are good for everybody. How are we doing down there? Keep talking, he says. Man, I'm running out of words. I'm just a sound guy. Okay.
I guess that's good enough.
Okay.
See right here. Yes.
I'll be there as soon as.
Holy. You have your question ready? Can you even see?
I can't, but if I take care of it, so that's what I'm messing
You guys got a nice shot of that column? They were the ordeal like on Friday. It was like select numbers up here. All the videos that they like that. So I guess they're here. Which I just Hey, how are you?
So we've got two
You gotta
up
say sit back
here.
there.
Yeah, we're all gonna be standing.
That's class.
Scott, I believe it's 2 8.
I wasn't sure where my notes were, but I was like, I'm gonna be standing up for the game.
Hey, we have a song.
She probably had to come this way.
Oh, yeah.
I was, when I got in my car, I believe, checked it. Here is where, that, like, as I got in the car, on NPR coverage. Oh, it was very nice.
I know she's like, and maybe she is.
You're a teaching chair.
I am a teaching chair.
Is that how people like, oh, I guess district people are referring to you now?
That's how I think. Yeah. Do you want me to go stand up front with the full Nazi hashtag?
You know what?
That's what I'm getting next to you. Yeah. There's chairs in here, but they're obstructing the view. I think cheerleaders are going to all squeeze into the pyramid right here. I was told to stay next to Sarah. Also, it was like 7 degrees.
Oh, my.
I know, I'm just telling you.
I wouldn't go plus. Oh, wait,
I was trying to figure it out.
This morning, my train was late, and I was just standing there out in the cold, like, yeah, there's no, like, liquor or anything, it's just like, it's basically a bus stop. Oh, no. No. Oh, I bet she is.
She's on stage now, she made all this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, what amazed me is with all this stuff going on, she still came into class on Friday. She's like, I need it. And I was like, okay.
And that's what I told her. I was like, I'm going to send out because I told her, like, we cannot become a distraction. They were like, no, she said, we're fine.
Yeah, no, I mean, Sailor did it all last year. And this year it's even better for, like, students to be able to get classmates. We didn't hurt her or anything.
Just know you can say no to anything.
I know. And I will if it's not those two when they're freaking out.
Yeah, well, that's really what's however. Those are two that actually go to ask permission, so that's why I can.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's great. They don't need me. I'm like, I tell them what
They don't need me. So are y'all are live streaming it? You are? Okay.
You guys.
There's where they sit on the job, so they should be over here. Yeah. So she knows like.
Yeah. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yes. Okay. 11.
We should have brought Mom. Oh, really? Oh. I mean, either way. I thought maybe like you go do pottery. Well, then she does. I have a shirt.
Yeah, me too. I left my 2-year-old at daycare this morning wrapped in a giant lace blanket. Oh, yeah.
Come on.
And they stopped talking to me. They literally just stopped talking. Oh, yeah.
There may be some things right around the corner. I did. Otherwise, these are some of the otherwise, you may not stand with those teachers. Thank you so much.
So cute.
All right. Okay, you're over here after.
This is really great.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Diana Conchola, and I'm a junior here at the Young Women's Leadership Academy. Hello, my name is Angelica Conchola, and I'm also a junior at the Young Women's Leadership Academy. So today we are here to welcome two very special guests to our campus. Before we do so, we also have a few special guests that we would like to recognize here in our audience. Dr. Ken Scribner, the 4th AZ Superintendent, and his wife, Mrs. Scribner. Ashley Foss, a 4th AZ Board of Education member. Barbara Griffith, the 4th AZ Senior Communications Officer. Renee Arrington, a chairwoman of the Foundation for the Young Women's Leadership Academy. Patty Leindecker, Chief Development Officer for the Young Women's Preparatory Network. And Louise Appleman, Board Chair of the Tarrant County College. In a few moments, our principal, Ms. Tamara Albury, will join us. She will act as today's moderator. It is my pleasure to introduce to you our first guest, Congressman Mark Veasey. Mr. Veasey is a Fort Worth native who has served as a representative for Texas' 33rd Congressional District since 2012. Mr. Veasey is the first African-American elected to the U.S. House of Representatives from Tarrant County. He graduated from Texas Wesleyan University, funded the Congressional Voting Rights Caucus, and in 2018, he introduced the Minority and Women STEM Act. It is my honor to introduce our second guest today, Ms. Nancy Pelosi, a distinguished female who holds the important role of Speaker of the House in the United States House of Representatives. Our guest was elected to Congress for the first time in 1987 and has continued to serve for more than 30 years. In 2002, she was elected as a Democratic leader of the House of Representatives, the first female in history. Not only has she been the first female to hold that position, but she has also been Speaker of the House for 2 terms, where she was first elected in 2006 during a time of economic recession and re-elected in 2018. During her first term, she passed key legislation which greatly helped the U.S. grow after the 2008 recession. Speaker Pelosi's career is a shining example of unwavering leadership and women's empowerment. Now please stand and join us in welcoming our special guests, Ms. Aubrey, Congressman Veasey, and Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi.
And I would like to once again thank Madam Speaker and Congressman Veasey for kicking off our Women's History Month with such an effect. This is just a wonderful experience for our young women. It's Women's History Month, and this is actually a great history in the making. It's truly a once-in-a-life opportunity for our gems. And today's focus, we're going to talk about women empowerment. Here at the Young Women's Leadership Academy, we are about empowering our leaders for tomorrow. And so definitely we want you all to be a part of that, and we're so happy that you're here. Young Women's Leadership Academy began in 2010, and we are a single-gender school. We are a public school, part of the Fort Worth Independent School District. And we have had 100% college graduation rate. We have 100% acceptance into four-year institutions. We are a Title I school. 78% of our students are on free reduced lunch, and we also are one of the top 4% high schools in the nation out of 20,000 schools, according to U.S. News and World Report. So we're very excited about that. So with that being said, we also like to expose our young women to a variety of women leaders, because it truly takes a village to raise a child. And so we have had Congresswoman Kate Granger speak to our students. We have had the Honorable Betsy Price speak to our students. And our students have also had the opportunity to hear former First Lady Michelle Obama. And so now they will have the pleasure to hear you, Madam Speaker. And so we are so happy that you're here. First question, what is the biggest challenge for women leaders at this moment in time?
Well, first may I say, Principal Albury, congratulations to you on this wonderful Young Women's Leadership Academy. The young women that I have met already have just been dazzling, and I see this room. What better way, Mr. Veasey, Congressman Veasey, to celebrate Women's History Month than here in this room, dazzling with the future. And what an honor it is to have the superintendent here, Superintendent Scribner and Vice Sue. Thank you so much for it's a big deal when the superintendent. Speaker's one thing, superintendent, that's a big deal. So thank you, and thank you for your leadership. Angelica and Diana showed me their project on the dork side. And it was just an example of the excellence, that Mr. Veasey, Congressman Veasey talks about all the time when he talks about the Young Women's Leadership Academy. He brags about it. Now he's a substitute. He had been a substitute teacher before he went into politics and the rest. So he has good judgment about schools. And he has bragged and said, one time you really have to come, so how perfect Women's History Month. In Women's History Month, we look back on the history, how women were so courageous all those many years ago, in the 1850s, to leave home and campaign for women to have the right to vote. In this Congress of the United States now, we will be observing the 100th anniversary of women having the right to vote. At the same time, we have 100 women, over 100 women in the Congress of the United States. That's a big number, but we want more. And I love your pin, the GEMS pin of wonderful, the women's place, and I said to Principal Albury, I said, that's a nice pin, but I think you should have women's places in the House, the Senate, and the White House. But the challenges that face women are challenges that in your generation will be overcome, because young boys and young girls are raised in a way that is much more respectable of possibilities of women. Families understand that their daughters have all the potential in the world, and some of us who are breaking, in my case, the marble ceiling to become speaker, but opening new doors to women so that it is not considered unusual to have women in Congress. But well, we're on our way to having even many more. What are the obstacles? Sometimes people think, well, if you wear a suit, then some things go with that. Excuse me, Mr. And I don't think that obstacles that we see now are obstacles they were going to face. But the obstacles many of us have faced, like I'm a mom, and I have 5 children, and my whole motivation was to address the issue of that 1 in 5 children in America lives in poverty. 1 in 5 children in America goes to sleep hungry at night. Well, I had my 5 children with all the love, affection, attention, at least the way I saw it. I hope they saw it that way too. That how could it be? We want our children to live in a world that all children have opportunity and mentoring and love and attention and appreciation for their worth. So that's what drew me into it 30 years ago. And at that time, it was very unusual. There were only 23 women in Congress. At that time, we have 106. So we've grown our numbers, but we still want more. But at that time, people were like, well, it's nice to have a woman here, but now, I think for you, those obstacles won't be there. But you still have to always, even among each other, work really hard, study really hard. I speak to you as if you're my grandchildren, because you're the age of some of my grandchildren. Some are younger, some are older. But study really hard so that you have all the options in the world. And should you decide, whether it's to build a robot, as Diana and Angelica did, and be in the world competition for it, and receive that recognition, or some other path, maybe it's creative in the arts, whatever it happens to be, know your power, that you're the only person like you in the world, and you have a unique contribution to make that is very special. So if anybody wants to say, well, it's not like what I think it should be, that's their problem. That's not yours. Yours is to be you. Know yourself, be yourself, know your power, because the future belongs to you, and you have to help shape it. And you're getting the most wonderful education and orientation to do that at the Young Women's Leadership Academy.
You spoke about being a mom, and I heard in my research, your mom was also a history maker, and she holds a patent. Would you tell us about that?
My mom was, now my mom, of course, that's a whole other generation previous. I wonder what she would have done should she be in your generation or even in mine, because in her generation there were obstacles. She wrote poetry, she was an inventor, she had 7 children. I was the youngest, 6 boys, 1 girl. And she was very involved in my father's political life. She believed, and she taught me, and how she helped shape me. My father too, but my mother especially, that we all have a responsibility to each other in our communities, and that if people needed help, we had to help them. We did that through our engagement in government and politics, but there are all kinds of ways to do that now, but then that was how we did it. And if somebody was hungry, she fed them. If somebody needed, how to get onto public assistance, how to get into a public project, how to all of those things. We treated people with great respect in our home, and when the door was knocked on, my father was the mayor for 12 years, all the while I was growing, even when I went to first grade, and when I was in college, he was still the mayor. People knocked on the door. It was as if it was biblical. What do they need? We have to supply it. And so that tradition is what is my 1 in 5 urge, that in our country, the greatest country that ever existed in the history of the world, 1 in 5 children go to sleep hungry at night. No, that's just not right. So we had to change public policy to make that happen. But the key to everything beyond that, meeting the essential needs, is education. Education is the great liberator, it's the great leveler, so you all have a wonderful opportunity here, but you bring your own luster to it, and that's what makes it all so great. So as one of the signs said out there, study hard, dream big, make a plan, all these wonderful truths out there. Did you have anything to say about that, Mr.? Not about my mother, but.
Well, no, again, I just want to reiterate what you said earlier. Thanks to Principal Alberry, to Dr. Scribner for having us here at Ywla. My son's a student at your companion school, YMLA. And I think that this is tremendous at the level of education that you are here. And I brag about, like Speaker Pelosi said, about this school all the time. And I also think that when you follow Speaker Pelosi's life, I think the most important thing to remember is that you do have to be smart. And this is a very brilliant woman. She is probably the best strategist in the entire United States Capitol. Whenever people say that it can't be done, Speaker Pelosi, she puts a plan on paper and strategizes, and she gets it done, which is why she's been successful. But again, being a mother of 5 children, working very hard and making the preparation and the plans and the organization to get to where she is today is amazing. Her dedication and hard work, and I want each and every one of you to remember that no matter what it is that you do in life, that there are so many smart people, and so many of the young people that work at the Capitol, just not too older than you. They come from some of the best universities in all of the country, but the ones that really set themselves apart are the ones that are dependable and work hard, just like Speaker Pelosi. And so please always remember that whatever you do and wherever you go.
I have 4 daughters, but we're the reverse, 6 boys, 1 girl, and I have 4 daughters and 1 son. And now with my grandchildren, I have 7 grandsons and 2 granddaughters. Wow. But in terms of girl power, they're all individuals. They're so completely different from each other. You wonder, how could this be? Same parents and same environment, but very different. And that difference is what you all bring to the future. And so again, respect. I saw that sign. What did it say in there? It said, alternatives, respect alternatives, or anything. I said, it reminded me of a slogan that we had in our house, love. Let other versions exist. So that we don't have to conform to somebody else's idea of what something should be. So just be you. Be ready though. Here's the thing. This is the one thing. Here, I'm a housewife. I have this thing in my head about the kids and this, and then when there was time to run for Congress, I never thought I would run for office. I was actually a very shy person when it came to being in the public arena. But when the opportunity came, I was ready. So just be ready, you know. Just be ready.
This question is for the both of you. How did you discover your purpose, and what was the defining moment?
I'll be happy to start off, and I think that I like to share my story, and particularly, I think it was mentioned that 78% of your students are free and reduced lunch. You know, for me, finding my purpose was very hard. I grew up here in Fort Worth, was born in Fort Worth. My mom was a product of Fort Worth Independent School District, went to Como High School. I graduated from Arlington Heights, but before graduating from high school, you know, I had a tough time. I went to about 6 or 7 different elementary schools in Fort Worth. We moved around a lot because we didn't have a lot of money. And one day, my uncle was over at our house. My uncle was one of the only college graduates in our family. He graduated from Como High School, and he had a track scholarship at Abilene Christian University. And my uncle was a television reporter for a number of years in Abilene, and then he moved back to Fort Worth, and he started working for Jim Wright, who was the majority leader of the House at the time when my uncle worked for him, and was one of Speaker Pelosi's predecessors. He became Speaker of the House and served one term as U.S. Speaker of the House and represented Fort Worth very proudly. And my uncle was over at our house one day. I was in 8th grade. My uncle was over at our house one day, and I was watching a White House press conference. And I think that Reagan was the president at the time. And I asked my uncle, I said, hey, how did that person get that job? The person that's answering questions for the president. And he said, well, that is the White House press secretary. And they answer questions for the president without making him look bad. That is basically that person's job. And I asked my uncle, I said, what did they major in? And he said they probably majored in mass communication or broadcast journalism, and maybe they've been a reporter themselves. But really from that point on, I knew I wanted to go into do something in the public arena, public policy. Sometimes my friends would come over and ask me to come outside and play basketball, and oftentimes I took them up on that, which is probably why I have bad knees today. But sometimes I'd be like, no, I want to stay in, and I would watch C-SPAN or watch what was happening in the news, and I just became very interested in this arena at a very young age, and I think that it was very helpful to me, particularly. And I'll tell you, I feel really blessed having my uncle and my mother play a role in my life, because moving around like that a lot can really be tough, especially academically. Moving around that much in school can be very trying. But I was able to finally find something to focus on and something positive, because a lot of kids in my situation could easily go the other way, and I could have easily gone the other way because not all the influences in my life here in Fort Worth were positive. But I was able to, again, hone in on something that I was very interested and focused in. And it was something, very positive in my life, and I'm very thankful for that.
Beautiful. Would you call yourself a junkie at that time?
Yeah, I think I was pretty much a junkie. Yeah, I was an 8th grader having a subscription to U.S. News and World. I think I pretty much was.
So social emotional learning is something that we address here at Young Women's Leadership Academy, as well as in Fort Worth ISD. It's a huge thing, making sure that our students are healthy socially and emotionally as they move on to that next level in higher institutions. Being a public figure, you are fair game when it comes to criticism and ridicule. You have to be tough. How have you gained that mental toughness?
I'd like to think of myself as strong or something, but people always say tough. I guess that's the word that comes forth. I would say, I thank you for that question, because that is something that girls in particular should understand. When you put yourself into the arena, people will criticize you. That's just the way it is, right? Men and women. And you have to be firm, as Congressman Veasey said, as to your purpose, your direction, your goals, so that you know why you're there. As I said, mine is the 1 in 5 in children living. That was what drew me in. And and how you would prepare for that is know your subject. In other words, if you decide you're going into the public arena for a purpose, your vision is about a fairer America, say, or maybe it's about saving the planet, or maybe it's about criminal justice, or whatever it happens to be that draws you in. Now you're in the arena, you can be a target. Know your subject. So when you talk, you won't know everything about the subject, but know enough so that people respect your judgment. And you're ready. Again, you're ready, emotionally, intellectually, and the rest. You have confidence. Confidence for girls is really the key. Confidence and courage. Courage to do it, and the confidence to know that you can, because you know your purpose, you know your why you're doing this, you know your what has drawn you in, and you know how you're going to attract other people, how you're going to have a plan. Vision, knowledge, plan. So when they attack you, you know why you're there. And the real thing, though, is this is all intellectual, your vision, your knowledge, your plan. but what is the emotional part of it? What is the part that people say, I'm drawn to that? And then you're a leader because you have a path and followers to it. Or that you may collaborate with someone else, follow their lead, but you will have a purpose, a timetable, and the rest. So when people attack you, what are they going to attack you for? They don't like the way you look, or they, mock you, or that's their problem. As I say, do not buy down other people's insecurities so that they can attack you because they feel, the reason they attack is because they have their own insecurities and they're afraid. And that's why one of the signs I love, girls, don't be afraid to be smart. Because some other time people are afraid when girls are smart. Again, hopefully not in your generation, but that has been one of the challenges. So so I know why I'm there. I know what my subject. I know how I'm going to get something done. Always listening to other people to grow, to respect other people's, let other versions exist, to build consensus. And if you know that, there's nothing they can say. There's nothing they can say. If you were effective, if you aren't effective, they don't attack you. They ignore you. What difference do you make? But if you are making a difference, as I, first woman speaker, progressive in terms of my politics, in terms of alleviation of poverty, eradication of disease, health care, fairness, better criminal justice system, fair to everyone, liberty and justice for all. And while some people don't like my version of that story, so they attack personally. But if I were not effective, they wouldn't even bother with me. So I think being effective draws attacks, but if you know your why, they can't hurt you.
And can I very quickly just kind of piggyback on something that the speaker just said about don't be afraid to be smart and show that you're smart. I will never forget when I was in high school in anatomy class, and we sit two to a table, and there were two young ladies that sat at the table next to us. And one of the girls, she came from a well-to-do family. Her father was a doctor. And anytime she would answer the questions correctly, and she knew a lot of the answers, there were these two gentlemen, or two boys that were sitting at another table nearby. And they would always comment on how she knew all the answers. And they were just amazed at how she knew all the answers. And she would always say, no, I'm not that smart. I only know this because my dad's a doctor. She would always say that. It's something that I've never forgotten, even though it was almost 30 years ago. She'd always say, I'm not that smart. My dad is just a doctor. She didn't want them to know. She didn't want those two boys to know because she was trying to fit in and they were popular. And she didn't want them to know that she was smart. And you should never be afraid to let people know that you have the knowledge.
That's a great story.
So, in both of your rights, you are superheroes, and every superhero should have a theme song. So, what would be your theme song?
Wow. That is a really good question. What would be my theme song? That, I would probably have to think about that. It depends. I have a different theme song for the occasion. So. Sometimes when I go into events, because like Nancy said, she was kind of shy, and I'm slightly introverted. I think that when I do the Myers-Briggs test, many of you in here have done that. I think that I'm just I'm close to the extroverted side, but a little more on the introverted side. And I have like different songs that I listen to in the car to get me hyped up, and it just really depends on the occasion. Before I go into every event, I listen to music or I listen to a song to kind of get me going. Sometimes my staff, when I'm here, they're like, are you sure you don't want us to drive you to various events? And sometimes I'm like, no, I'm going to drive myself because I want to literally just turn the radio up and get hyped up before I go.
Well, I hadn't been asked that question before, but there is a song that I do like. It's called One. It's by U2, Bono, and U2. And it's One, and it's about oneness and that. Now, it's maybe not a popular song, but I do have it on my phone in case you want to hear it. But what I love about it is, again, it's I'm a U2 fan. So one place where I have sort of invaded the territory of my children, because usually I don't want them thinking that I'm rocking to the music, right, really? Or my grandchildren now, but the 3 generations of us have been fans of U2. And in that, this one, it's about just always thinking of bringing people together. And why I love it is that it's so in keeping with our country. Our founders, they were so magnificent in their vision for a democracy. And one of the guidances they gave us is from e pluribus unum, from many, one. That no matter what our differences are, and our differences of approach, which are legitimate, it's not, you know, to be respectful, but let other versions exist, that we are one. So always remembering, like in this school, you're one, you have this pride of who you are becoming, and with the purpose of Principal Aubrey and the decision that was made to have an all-girls public school leadership academy. So it's always thinking of, like in the Congress, one, we're one country, and that integrity, that oneness is so important. So I enjoy the music on a different plane. However, it does have an inspirational meaning for me too. But I like to dance to it too.
I love one by Metallica.
Well, I love Metallica because they're in the Bay Area. I know some of the players, the performers there. So we have that in common. Metallica one by. These are of another generation, I know.
So yesterday I learned that you have the pictures of 3 presidents in your office. And so one of the relationships that's very endearing to me is a former First Lady, Michelle Obama, and former President George Bush. And I heard that you have a picture of his father, former President George Herbert Walker Bush. And so if you could describe that relationship and what you learned about leadership.
Well, I have in my office, when you come and visit, which I hope you will, and we can extend the invitation, right? I have 3 pictures with the president. One with John F. Kennedy when I was a teenager, when I was in high school, your age. I'll tell you about that in a second. Let me tell you about it now. So I went to girls' Catholic school, and the nuns were Irish Catholic nuns from Boston. And all they talked about were the Kennedys. The Kennedys, the Kennedy family. Now this is ancient history. It's like, I'll be talking about Abraham Lincoln or something, but this was a long time ago. But for us, the Kennedys were a Catholic family. And then President Kennedy was running. He was going to be the first Catholic president. He won first. So in the course of that time, President Kennedy came to Baltimore, Maryland, to go to a big dinner. My father was the mayor. My mother, the first lady, and ordinarily this was all black tie, and all, you know, to go to this a big dinner. It was for the United Nations. It was honoring a Baltimore figure as a supporter of the United Nations. So why I'm telling you this story is, so since my mother is not coming, she says, why don't you go in my place? Oh my gosh, I'm going to see John F. Kennedy. So I get seated next to John F. Kennedy at the dinner, my mother's place, right? And oh, I'm just out of my mind. Wait till I tell the nuns. He's writing a sign on the program, all the rest of that. And then, forgive me for this, I always feel a little guilty. There's a table of kids from high school who were called the United Nations High School Program. And I was in that in high school. So they came over and said to me, since you're in the UN program in high school, we invite you to stay, have dinner with us at our table. And I said, I'm here representing my mother. I was tempted because I wanted to be respectful, but I wasn't that tempted. So I said, I'm here representing my mother, and I could never leave the seat vacant next to the guest of honor. I have to tell you, I still feel a little guilty about not going over to that table and giving up that seat next to the next president of the United States, John F. Kennedy. But I stayed there. And And that night, somebody took a picture. I never saw it. Somebody told me it was in a magazine someplace, and I got the picture. So that's the picture that is in my office. And you can see the guilt on my face. The next one is with Barack Obama, who was on the 200th birthday of Abraham Lincoln. I was speaker. Of course, he's president of the United States, and I treasure that picture. And then the third one is with President George Herbert Walker Bush, whom I loved, and I love the Bushes. You know, you have to understand that we're in a very unusual situation now, but then there was a more respectful back and forth among people in office. And I was a new member of Congress when he was president, but we worked together, even though we had our disagreements. You have to know that. I mean, we had disagreements between the Democrats and the Republicans, but we had respect. I loved him, and he invited me when I was 25 years in Congress, a few years ago, to speak at Texas A&M College Station at his library for my 25th anniversary, and then for his 25th anniversary for Points of Light, his beautiful initiative for people to do things like my mom did, you know, helping other people. He invited me to speak at the convention center in Houston for that. So we have a friendship. And on one of the first occasion when we were there at Texas A&M, I had my family, because some of my family lives in Houston, three grandsons, that we're in the picture with him, and that is with great honor ensconced in our office. I have with it now some, when I send them flowers for this, that, or the other thing, the two of them would write notes back. And so I have those notes there with it. And the note paper is their two dogs. Their two dogs. They're so lovely. Our country is very blessed by both, of course, Mrs. Bush, fabulous, and literacy. I mean, she was spectacular. I loved her, you know, President Bush, but also President George W. Bush. I have a good friendship with him as well. So it is, and you know what? On this issue right now, on the issue of immigration, which is a big issue, both of those presidents were really champions in respecting the dignity and worth of every person and what newcomers bring to our country. The Bushes.
So we have 3 students who will be asking questions.
And then before we go there, I just want to say how wonderful that you had Michelle. Isn't she just spectacular? May I just tell you Michelle's story? You will appreciate this. So when I became speaker, I wanted to have more, shall we say, women, people of color. You go to the Capitol, and it's a lot of white men. I mean, it's in the statuary hall, you know, all the statues. So we put Rosa Parks, Helen Keller, just mix it up. So we were putting in the statues for Sojourner Truth, great suffragist and just a remarkable person. And we just had a newly elected president, Barack Obama, and Michelle Obama agreed to be our speaker. And I tell you this, as she said, I know that Sojourner Truth would be very excited to see us here with a woman speaker of the House. But I can't even imagine what she'd be thinking to see me, Michelle Obama, as the First Lady of America. Isn't that beautiful? Imagine Sojourner Truth, Michelle Obama, history, the future, you. Next question.
So our first student is a junior, Soraya Beal, if you would stand and ask Madam Speaker question.
Good morning, Madam Speaker. Teens such as me face adversities on our road to success. What advice would you give us to overcome these adversities?
Adversities in what, darling? I missed the beginning.
Teens such as me face adversity.
Oh, teens such as you, okay. Well, you know, as I said earlier, just have confidence in who you are. Because this attitude that somebody should not respect what that is more their problem than yours. And I hope that you're not going to be facing adversities. I hope that we had rid ourselves of some of that and education is a way to do that. There's just no question. But know yourself, know your power, be yourself. Don't try to alter yourself to somebody else's view of the world, and therefore they are adverse to who you are. That's their problem. But the confidence that you should have by dint of who you are, individual, nobody like you, special. The beauty of this education, I cannot emphasize education as being the great door opener, threshold crosser, liberator. It's everything to make your own mark. And just ignore those people. They're unimportant. If they were important, they wouldn't be so insecure to have adversity to who you are. As I say, just be yourself. Be confident in who you are, what you bring to it. But also, study hard. I think I'm talking to my grandchildren really, and my children, but it's just so important to command what you're interested in. To not only care about it, but to know about it. And to do something about it. So I have no doubt, just by dint of the question that you asked, that you will ignore them and respect you. Confidence and courage. It takes some courage from time to time. So thank you for your question. Did you have something you want to say on that?
No, I would just say that the education, again, is definitely the key. I mean, I knew that with me growing up, again, moving around from school to school like that, I always knew in the back of my mind that it was going to be education that was going to lift me out. I loved reading about historical figures when I was growing up. And the one thing that they all had in common was that they took education seriously. And so you always have to keep that in mind, no matter where you come from, what your circumstances may happen to be, that there is a brighter day ahead, that there is a road that you can take that will lead you to places that you have only dreamed of. But you do have to stay focused and stay committed and stay on the right path, and you can get there.
What's interesting now, as I see this GEMS button, is that there's some areas like building robots that are new. And so, it doesn't even have to be that. It could be the arts, it could be the literature, it could be anything else. But there's some areas that because of science and technology and engineering are viewed in a different way. And so you're actually pioneers. You're doing things that we could never, well, I'm not speaking for you, but I know my grandchildren and my children are doing things that were not possible for me just because the social media, the means of communication are all different. So it's almost a level playing field, and you're fresh out of the gates with everyone else. And I think that is what we would call a special opportunity. A special opportunity to take advantage, as Diana and Angelica are doing with their on the Dork side, building the robot. Now, who would have thought in the previous generation that would be an entree into demonstrating excellence in the rest? But here we are. So just see everything as an opportunity. Somebody challenges you, you see it as an opportunity to show the confidence that you have. I know you'll do that.
Our next question comes from Ywla Hill, also a junior.
Good morning. What kind of legacy do you hope to leave?
Legacy? What the legacy I hope to leave is that and lately I've been a little more, shall we say, braggadocio about my own accomplishments. And people are like, I've never heard you just sort of like brag like that before. But I said, you know why I'm doing that? Not that I'm not uncomfortable with that, less and less, but that I want young women to just assert themselves and not hide their accomplishments under a bushel. When I first, when I had my little babies, I had these little kids, and the mayor of the city called me and he said, I want to appoint you to the library commission because I know you spend a lot of time at the library with the children and you volunteer there and since you're interested, librarian is here, I met him earlier, you should be on library commission. I said, oh no, Mr. Mayor, we'll still volunteer. We love the library, and so we'll always be helpful. He said, look, I'm saying this to you, especially you as a woman and a mom. Accept the recognition that is given to you. Don't say, I'll be a volunteer no matter what. Give the appointment to somebody else. Get the recognition for what you are doing. And so now I'm sort of remembering that and saying, I want young women to know that it's okay to brag about your robot project, you know, to just get out there and say what it is. Because too many things people don't notice, or they forget, or they think somebody else did it. You have to declare. Had an idea. I knew what I was talking about. I had a plan to get it done, and other people joined and we got it done. Or I joined others to get it done. So I think it's really important to assert. And the reason I'm, as I always say, more assertive now than I might be even comfortable doing, growing up in the generation that I did, where you really didn't give credit to everybody else. Well, there's amazing what you can accomplish when you give credit to everybody else. But as a woman on the path, you have to take some credit yourself. It's really important.
I would say the legacy that I hope to leave behind is that while I was in public office, that I did things that helped people have a better grounding for themselves. People that come from backgrounds and circumstances like my own, that I've advocated for policies and helped put policies into law that give families that are single, moms like my mother was raising me and my younger brother, that give them the opportunities to really achieve and advance in the society. My grandmother died maybe about a month ago, and she was 106 years old. And my grandparents were very poor. They both made really good grades in school. They grew up in segregated Corsicana down in Marlborough County. But they did very well in school, and all 9 kids. My mom was number 7 out of 9. All 9 of the kids did very well in school. Some of them chose to go to college, some did, like my mom chose not to go to college. There was a good foundation that was set in the Como community back during that time period, and a lot of the families were poor. And I want to make sure that young people, again, that are growing up in circumstances that are really beyond their control, that they have the resources, the tools, that they have opportunities like you're having today to be able to visit with the Speaker of the House, that about things that will help you advance your career as you go through college, as you go into the workforce. I mentioned my uncle to you earlier that worked for Speaker Jim Wright. Of course, he had his own family, so he wasn't always around to help me. And I wish that I had certain mentors and people that were in certain positions to be able to answer questions that I had. But I think for me, having working families, having families that are low income, middle income, have those same tools and resources that other kids have, is important, because as the speaker mentioned earlier, it really is education. That's the one thing that throughout all of my travels and all of the experiences that I've had, that has always remained constant, is that when you work hard and you get an education, that's just the beginning of opening up doors for you that make so many things possible. And without it, being able to relieve yourself from the circumstances that you come from really makes it so difficult and so hard. And I want to leave a legacy where I've helped in that area.
Well, in part of legacy, I want to say this. If I ruled the world, what my legacy would be, so I have to take a piece of it here, is the education of girls and women. Girls and women, parts of the world, women have not had access to education. So further to Congressman Veasey's point, education is key. But the education of girls and women throughout the world, it just lifts everyone up. And so, as I said at the beginning, my purpose was the 1 in 5 children who lives in poverty in America. That spreading of opportunity is my focus. In the morning, that's what I get up to do. What are they going to try to do today to hurt America's work? Well, no use going into that part of it. But here's the thing on that. In order to make some of that possible, one of the legacies that many of us share in Congress is to make the political process more fair so that more people can participate and more ideas can come forward that are not blocked by special interest, but that the people's interest. And that's part of what we have something called HR 1 in the Congress to make government much more fair, clean, and attractive to young people to be involved. And that money does not dominate, but the public interest, the people's interest dominates. So when you have a legacy that you want, what are some of the tools that you need to establish along the way? And I do believe that we will have a fair economy and society and the rest the more we reduce the role of money in politics and government, and the more we increase the voices of everyone in our society. And technology is helping with that with the social media now as well. So.
We have one final question. Isabel Simpson, also a junior.
Good morning.
Isabel.
Hi. Thank you for coming. When Ruth Bader Ginsburg was asked how many female justices she would like to see in office, she replied, when all 9 are women. She then went on to add that there had been 9 men and no one had ever raised a question for that. Madam Speaker, what political roles would you like to see filled by women?
Well, of course, I'd like I'm with Ruth Bader Ginsburg in saying, you know, when we talk about presidential campaigns and they'll say, well, could there be 2 women on the ticket? So, no, 2 women. No, we've had 2 men for over 200 years. Now, only recently having some women on the ticket. I do think that we're at a time in history. Everything is about time and timing and taking advantage of the opportunity that time provides. And I do think with the election of Barack Obama, a door was opened that will never close, that it's going to be something just judged on its merit, a person judged on his or her merit as to whether they can show their vision, show their knowledge, show their plan to get them their strategic thinking, and how do they attract support. So I think that in a short period of time, we will have a woman president of the United States. I always thought it would come before we'd ever have a woman speaker, because in the Congress had been a very male-oriented organization. Just the pecking order was, you'll have it, then you'll have it, then you'll have it, then you'll have it. So when I went to run for leadership, they said, who said she could run? Oh, really? Then they said, well, she has a following and people are asking her to run, and a lot of the women wanted to run. The men said, and this is fewer than 20 years ago, the men said, why don't the women just make a list of the things they want to get done and we'll do that for them. Oh, really? Poor babies. So you just, I just had to go out there and run, but I thought the American people were far more ready for American woman president than the Congress of the United States was for a woman speaker then. Now, of course, that's already been established. But there should be no job, any job, that a woman is not welcome, respected to hold in our country. And again, when Ruth Bader Ginsburg speaks, we all listen. But when she says 9, because we've had 9 men for a long time, that could be possible. That could be possible. But in order for any of it to happen, we have to have a woman president, because the president appoints the court. I don't think a woman president will appoint all women to the court, but over time, that could happen. Again, let's just stipulate to the fact that there should be no situation that is closed to women. We know by dint of intellect, talent, and the rest that women can do any job in our country. And we also do know, which is one of our, we have pins that say, when women succeed, America succeeds, because the success of women has a big impact on our country and our thinking. And when women see other women, moms or not moms, just other women in positions, they think, well, somebody thinks the way I do there, so I have a little more confidence for what might come out of that discussion or that dialogue. So the success of some women encourages the success of others. Let me just make this final point in that regard. It is not a zero-sum game. Some people think, well, if this woman succeeds, and that's it for me. No, the success of any women is the success of all women, and the example and good job that that woman does gives opportunity to others. I'm very encouraged by what I see. We have 91 Democratic women. There's 15 Republican women. They'll have to do more. But we made a decision. We made a decision that we were going to elect women to the Congress. And to see the diversity of backgrounds, some are veterans, some are moms, some are moms and veterans and engineers,
CIA.
More than one in terms of our national security in one version or the other. So there isn't a person there who couldn't be a leader in any field, on the public side, the private side. Some leave the public sector and bring their values and their knowledge of that into the private sector, and that's a good idea too. So whether it's the academic world, whether it's corporate America, whether it's the military, whether it's Wall Street, whether it's Congress, it all is improved by the increased participation of women. And if it comes a time when it looks like the way you did before, where there were all men in a certain board of director, whatever it is, well, then we will have arrived. But in the meantime, it's just keep increasing our numbers. And yet the way young boys and fathers see sisters and daughters is so different now. The mail I get from fathers of daughters saying, you expect the moms, because the moms, if they're older, they're like my generation, they're like, at last I saw this. Or if they're younger, they're like, this opens doors for me. But the fathers saying, my daughters are spectacular, or my daughter can do anything, and now you've opened another door for her. So I think that's a change in attitude in the way families see daughters and what their opportunities can be. But this institution is blessed by the presence of each and every one of you. This academy is. And you are blessed to be part of it. You both add luster to each other. It's just a treat to see you. I'm so inspired by you. I congratulate you, Madam Principal and Superintendent, for what is happening here. And I thank Congressman Veasey for giving me the invitation and the honor to be with you this morning. So thank you so much.
Well, that's really my final question. Come back.
This is a joy for me. I'm inspired and strengthened by it.
Madam Speaker and Congressman Veasey, thank you so much for your time this morning. Madam Speaker, on behalf of our gens and our faculty at Ywla, I want to just thank you for your time and your leadership. You serve as a wonderful role model for our students, and we just had a wonderful time listening to you this morning and sharing your wisdoms and your pearls. So I want to thank you. And we also have tokens of appreciation that were created by Veasey and Ywla, sitting in that right.
Oh, so let me get it straight. 6th grade and under saddles, 7th grade and above,
8 to 6, 6 and 8, it's about saddle shoes.
Saddle shoes, and then what? I see the hierarchy of things. Thank you. Thank you. Let me thank all of you here for sending Congressman Veasey to the Congress of the United States. He is recognized by our colleagues with prime committee assignments to make a big difference. He cares about the veterans, the small businesses in our community, and he's there to help them get the job done. He cares about our veterans and all of his committee work, and he cares about education and our young people and your future. So thank you for sending him to Congress. You designed these? I'll display these in the Speaker's office of the Capitol of the United States with great pride. And when you visit there, you'll see them. Thank you.